Silence does not erase you. It refines you. Not everyone who speaks loudly understands deeply, and not everyone who stays quiet has nothing to say. Some people choose silence so they can listen, not just to words, but to truth beneath them. They wait, they observe, and when they finally speak, their words come from clarity, not noise. If you are quiet, you are not missing your voice, you are protecting it. Quiet people are often misunderstood as having little to contribute, when in reality the opposite is usually true. In psychology, people who speak less tend to think more before they open their mouths. Their silence is not hesitation, it is filtration. Every thought passes through an internal process of weighing meaning, impact, and necessity. If a sentence feels unnecessary, repetitive, or shallow, they simply don't release it. Unlike talkative personalities who process ideas out loud, quiet individuals process internally. Their minds are active long before their voices are. They don't speak to fill space or to maintain visibility. They speak when words carry weight. For them, talking is not a social reflex but a deliberate act. This is why their comments often feel precise, insightful, or unexpectedly deep. They are not reacting, they are responding. Silence becomes a holding space where ideas mature instead of being rushed out half-formed. Importantly, this does not mean quiet people lack opinions or emotions. They often have very strong inner worlds. They just don't feel the need to constantly broadcast them. In their psychology, restraint is not weakness. It is discernment. Their silence is not a void. It is a filter protecting meaning from being diluted. One of the strongest psychological traits of quiet people is their tendency to observe first and react later. While others respond instantly, they pause. This pause allows them to take in more than just words. They notice body language, micro-expressions, tone shifts, and emotional undercurrents that often go unnoticed. Instead of focusing on what to say next, their attention is outward. They read the room as a whole, who feels comfortable, who feels threatened, who holds influence, and who is hiding discomfort behind humor or confidence. Their minds connect small details into a broader pattern. This is why quiet people often understand situations more clearly than those who dominate conversations. Speaking too quickly can block perception. Observation requires silence. Psychologically, this is a form of delayed processing. They resist impulsive reactions because they value accuracy over speed. They would rather be right than fast. While others speak to think, they think to speak. This internal sequencing makes them appear distant or slow to respond, but in reality, they are building a deeper mental map of the situation. Their awareness operates beneath the surface. Silence, for them, is not disengagement. It is data collection. For many quiet people, silence did not begin as a personality trait, it began as a survival skill. Early experiences often taught them that speaking freely came with consequences. They may have been interrupted, dismissed, misunderstood, or subtly punished for expressing emotions or opinions. Over time, the mind adapts. Psychologically, children learn quickly what keeps them safe. If being quiet reduced conflict, avoided embarrassment, or prevented rejection, silence became associated with control. Observation replaced expression. Watching first meant fewer mistakes later. This does not mean every quiet person experienced trauma, but many learned that listening was more effective than speaking. Silence offered predictability. It allowed them to anticipate reactions instead of risking them. In uncertain environments, observation feels safer than exposure. As adults, this learned pattern remains. They may still feel that speaking carries risk, not because they lack confidence, but because their nervous system remembers that restraint once protected them. Their quietness is often a refined coping mechanism, polished over time. This is why their silence can feel intentional rather than shy. It carries history. What looks like passivity from the outside is often careful self-regulation on the inside. Silence, for them, is not absence. It is memory guiding behavior. If you are someone who listens closely while others talk, you may recognize yourself here. Quiet observers often absorb details that slip past louder voices. You remember subtle comments, changes in mood, and moments others forget seconds later. You may find that you understand the emotional dynamics of a room without anyone explaining them: who feels tense, who feels ignored, who is performing, who is genuine. These impressions form quietly, without effort. When you do speak, people often pause, not because you are loud, but because your words tend to land where they matter. You say less, but what you say feels relevant, focused, grounded. You may also need solitude to recharge. Social environments drain you not because you dislike people, but because constant interaction overloads your internal processing. Silence helps reset your system. This pattern is not accidental. It reflects a mind tuned toward depth rather than volume, toward meaning rather than noise. If you have ever felt different for being this way, understand this: observing more than speaking is not a flaw. It is a form of quiet intelligence. At the psychological core of quiet people is a nervous system that processes experience internally. Instead of releasing energy outward through constant speech, their minds cycle information inward, analyzing, reflecting, and replaying. Thought is continuous, even when the body appears still. Because of this internal activity, talking can feel exhausting. Speaking requires translating complex inner processing into linear language, which drains mental energy quickly. Silence, on the other hand, allows their system to stay regulated. Observation feels stabilizing. It gives them a sense of control. Quiet people often use silence the way others use movement or conversation, as a way to self-soothe. When things become overwhelming, they withdraw slightly, not to disconnect, but to recalibrate. This inward orientation is not avoidance. It is nervous system management. This is why forcing them to talk more often backfires. It disrupts their natural rhythm. When allowed to remain quiet, they actually become more perceptive, more present, and eventually more willing to speak. Silence is not emptiness in their psychology. It is a functional state, one that protects focus, conserves energy, and keeps their inner world balanced. Certain psychological profiles are especially likely to be quiet observers. Deep introverts, for example, draw energy from internal thought rather than external stimulation. Emotional intelligence is also common among quiet people. They sense feelings quickly, even when nothing is said. Highly sensitive individuals process sensory and emotional input intensely. To avoid overload, they naturally reduce output, speaking less, observing more. People with analytical minds also fit this pattern. They break situations down, connect logic, and wait until conclusions feel solid before speaking. Another group includes those who have experienced emotional wounds. Trauma can heighten awareness. When trust has been broken before, the mind becomes vigilant. Observation replaces assumption. These categories often overlap. A person may be introverted, sensitive, emotionally aware, and analytical all at once. What connects them is not weakness, but depth. Their inner worlds are layered and active. Silence gives those layers room to exist. Observation gives them clarity. Quiet people are not lacking presence. They are carrying more internally than most people realize. Society often misreads quiet people because silence makes others uncomfortable. When someone does not speak much, assumptions rush in to fill the gap. They are labeled shy, insecure, distant, or socially awkward. Sometimes they are even seen as unfriendly or uninterested. Psychologically, this says more about the observer than the quiet person. Many social environments reward volume over substance. Speaking frequently is mistaken for confidence. Silence is mistaken for lack. In reality, quiet people often care deeply about connection. They simply express it differently. They listen fully, instead of half listening while waiting to speak. They notice emotional shifts, instead of dominating space. Their attention is steady, not performative. Because they don't constantly signal engagement through words, others may miss how present they actually are. This leads to misunderstanding. Quiet people are not withdrawn, they are selective. Not cold, but contained. The danger of these labels is that quiet people may begin to doubt themselves. They may feel pressure to perform louder versions of connection that don't feel natural. Understanding this mislabeling is crucial. Silence is not social failure, it is a different communication style, one that values depth over display. Quiet people do not use words casually. For them, speech is intentional. They don't talk to fill silence or reduce awkwardness. They talk when something meaningful needs to be said. Psychologically, they see silence as part of communication. A pause can carry respect, stillness can signal attention. Not every moment requires sound. This belief shapes how they interact. They avoid small talk, not because they lack social skill, but because surface-level exchange feels draining. What energizes them is substance, insight, honesty, relevance. If a conversation stays shallow, they remain quiet. If it deepens, they engage fully. This selective use of speech often makes their words stand out. When they finally speak, people listen. Their statements are usually concise, thoughtful, and grounded. To them, speaking less is a form of integrity. It prevents noise from drowning meaning. It keeps communication clean. In a world that equates talking with value, quiet people quietly resist. They understand something many forget. Words gain power when they are used sparingly. One truth rarely acknowledged is that quiet people often understand situations at a deeper level than those who speak the most. Because they are not focused on performing or controlling conversations, their attention stays sharp. They notice who influences the room, who seeks validation, and who speaks from insecurity rather than authority. They pick up on unspoken tension, the slight pause before a response, the forced laugh, the shift in posture when certain names are mentioned. These details reveal more than words ever could. Over time, quiet observers learn to read intention beneath language. Psychologically, observation creates pattern recognition. Quiet people connect behaviors across moments instead of reacting to single events. This allows them to sense manipulation, hidden agendas, or emotional imbalance early. This ability can feel isolating. Seeing beneath the surface often means noticing things others prefer to ignore, but it also grants clarity. Quiet people are rarely fooled by appearances alone. Their silence protects this awareness. Speaking too soon would disrupt the flow of information. By staying quiet, they allow people to reveal themselves naturally. In this way, silence becomes strategic, not calculated, but perceptive. It allows quiet people to understand the true dynamics at play without stepping into them prematurely. Living in a noisy world can feel exhausting when your strength lies in stillness. The key for quiet people is not to become louder, but to become more aligned with who they are. Choosing environments that respect thoughtfulness over constant interaction makes a profound difference. Deep connection matters more than broad visibility. Quiet people thrive when they invest in a few meaningful relationships rather than many shallow ones. Their depth needs space to breathe. Self-expression does not have to be verbal. Writing, art, reflection, and focused work often communicate more accurately than spontaneous speech. These outlets honor their natural rhythm. Most importantly, quiet people must stop measuring themselves by extroverted standards. Speaking less does not mean contributing less. Silence is not absence, it is presence expressed differently. When quiet people accept their nature, they stop feeling out of place. They begin to move through the world with quiet confidence. In a culture that rewards noise, choosing depth is an act of strength. Silence does not erase you. It refines you. Not everyone who speaks loudly understands deeply, and not everyone who stays quiet has nothing to say. Some people choose silence so they can listen not just to words, but to truth beneath them. They wait, they observe, and when they finally speak, their words come from clarity, not noise. If you are quiet, you are not missing your voice. You are protecting it.